Okay. Opening up the bag of the recreation car.
They never get back to us about that. It was interesting, I took a class with the woman in Washington State. She said, they, not the summer, this is summer.
I did hear about that. It's a footage, but something recent, but
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's September 7th, 2022, 6 p.m. I'd like to open the floor up to public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action. Yes, right there.
Can you, wait, say where I'm at, what's the protocol?
Probably staying somewhere over here. That'd be good.
Sure.
So that's the hour to get to. That's all right.
Paid properly as a citizen of the community. I'm here to ask a very simple favor. I'd like a comprehensive package of the code officer's decisions in and around the property that's next to my property. I live on 113, property is 107. My neighbors here, who remember you guys? And we've been looking at this project and attempting to get information, and it's been very difficult. Let me just turn to my colleague and say it's been very helpful to us when I went in there, but the code officer tends to keep things to himself and very difficult to communicate with. So what I'm asking for very simply now is, can you use your offices, get all that information in a comprehensive folder so we can sit down and study it? That's pretty much the request, yes.
So is this cottager?
Pardon me, cottage, I'm sorry, I didn't say
So what are
cottage.
the addresses again?
Well, the property that I would like the database on is 107. We live at 113, 121. So there, obviously, our house abuts the property. These folks are on the other side, and Andrew Todd is on the far side of that property.
Yep.
And there's a right of way, as you all know, that goes down to Chandler's Cove at that point. We're not here to talk about the right of way. That was another dialogue that's been going on, but we're not here to encumber you with that tonight. That's it. Yes.
So to comment to that, he was here last week and he has a folder that's on his desk that has every single document in relation to all the building permits that were submitted for the current work that's happening.
You can combine, pick it up.
You can't pick it up. You can look at it and you can make copies or whatever you want, but that's the folder for this
Yes.
specific
Yeah.
purpose, and then the documents that you need to scan to your attorney.
Excellent, thank you. That's positive news. It would have been helpful if we had had that document at the beginning of the process, so we could appeal the dynamic around us. We never had that information. We just watched the building come out of the ground, which was quite sober and distracting. I'm not an expert. I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. There's a hell of a lot I don't know. I'm not an expert on the coding and zoning processes in this state. And that's what we want to take a look at and be sure that we were all treated fairly. Nothing more than that. So we come as, friends and neighbors. That's our approach. That's how we look at this. But we want to do our homework and go back and be, my life experience has taught me to be professionally courteous and honest. And that's how I think you folks behave. So that's the road we're going down. Did I miss anything? Let me talk to people who are smarter than me.
Can I just add, because Jim, we have a timeline of all the communications that went on between us and the code officer. We would like to share those with you because I think it should, and because this is time is of the essence. When it comes to this, appeals are only allowed within 30 days of the permit being issued. And so we've lost our window because of the lack of ability to get the documents.
So I'll leave this with you. All right. Yeah.
Well, could I ask Jim a question?
Yes.
Jim, I may have asked you this already, but were you guys successful in securing a meeting with Jim Butler, the code officer?
I met with Jim Butler briefly in his office. As we recall, he scheduled it on a Thursday. I went there, then he canceled that meeting. He scheduled the next day at 4. He wasn't there. I saw him at 5. I had a very terse meeting with him, no details. I did get into one detail. I wanted to know the definition of the term temporary, because the double wide has been described to me as temporary. He did not answer that question. He said he didn't know. But there were no more details on that conversation.
So he said he could not define the definition of temporary.
No. What went through my mind at the time, by the way, there's temporary naval buildings in Washington, D.C. that went up in 1918. And that rattled me a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen here.
Are there any other questions? Comments?
Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much.
All right. Any other comments? All right, moving on to the town reports. I'll hand it over to Deacon.
I tried keeping it light, or as light as I could. So very general updates, dredging. As you're aware, we were waiting for a deadline from Mark Cable to hear back from the previous dredging company that had done to see if they were interested. The deadline was, I believe it was last Thursday or the Thursday before. They communicated with him on Thursday and asked for another 24-hour extension, which means that it fell back to Monday. When they came back, the proposal and the numbers were almost double what he had anticipated. And so he couldn't give any definitive numbers, but he was going back to meet with the construction staff to try to see if they can negotiate some numbers down. If that doesn't happen, then that's gonna put us in a position of needed to, put out to bid, with a different company. And I have not heard from them since, so once they do, I'll follow up, but that was just for the news. Audit, they were out here in August. They, I think initially came out and were a little nervous that because we haven't been audited and with such new transitions that they weren't sure what they were gonna find with the books, but, they were pretty impressed with how organized everything was. They're hoping to have the 2021 audit done by the end of September. Once that is done, it'll probably a couple month, kind of, dull before, we see any progress in 2022. But either way, good progress in the last month or two on that. The main bond bank, we filled out and submitted all the application to apply for the $250,000 main bond for the dredging, and the $975, for the broadband. There are some updates that I'm working on. The $250 dredging one went through fine, the $975 because of the type of a bond it is. We're gonna have to basically stagger it in a couple of different times to be able to receive that money. But I'll have a full update on that next meeting when I have all the details. With the treasurer's report, Tim has been doing a really good job with the bookkeeping. He's really gotten into a good rhythm. Bank reconciliation with a lot of, end of year, beginning of year, lots of different transfers. It's definitely taken him a little bit more time to figure out the monthly bank reconciliation. He was sick for a couple days, or a day last week, so he wasn't able to finish to give us that full exact number to make sure everything was balanced. But I checked the account and there was a decent balance. The reserve account I shared with you. So I shared the regular expense and revenue summary report. But then the Machias Savings Bank statement, you'll see on here withdrawals, and that's anytime you have any kind of withdrawals or deposits, that's where you're going to see those numbers adjust and change. The one thing to keep in mind with this is we committed for the taxes. I have one more thing that I have to do with Jackie, and then what I'll do is I will transfer or commit in trio the fiscal year 2023 budget. So all of those numbers will be in there, including the transfers into the Machias Savings Bank reserve accounts, the $540,600 that was voted on by taxpayers. While this reserve account seems pretty, pretty solid right now, it's going to be significantly higher once those transfers are done. So the expense revenue summaries, everything that for the beginning of the month is looking good. There's really high revenue in certain places like excise tax, which for the month of July, we took in $13,000 in excise tax. That's only car registration. So you can imagine how many cars we're registering. And the mind-blowing one, transfer station, $20, $40, $100 here and there, just the month of July, we took in $6,500. So a clear sign that we really need to look a little bit more thoroughly into, some departments to work on expansion and making it so they work a little bit smoothly. But other than that, everything with the books look fine. In addition to this, I met last week. I went into town and I met with the two women that I do a lot of the banking with. And we sat down and I asked basic questions about, fraud, security, cross-training, things like that. And they said that, once again, with the transitions that we've experienced, we seem to be doing a good job, and it definitely has helped having Marjorie in our back pocket to kind of help us guide us through it. So, but that's the two reports for me, and then the other ones are the standard harbor master, code enforcement, public works, The only thing to mention with the public works report, we installed 2 road signs at Chandler's down at the end of the road in front of the stream, the protected stream that said no vehicle access beyond this point. Less than 2 weeks after they were installed, they were stolen. And the code enforcement officer with the growth permits issued to date, what he has is on the website, you can click where you can see all the permits that he's issued and what day they're issued. So it's a live Google Docs that he works off of. But the growth permit, something to keep in mind, is according to our ordinance, we're allowed 20 in a 5-year span, which averages to 4 a year. 2018, 2019, 2020, we didn't even come close to exceeding that. So as a result, even though we've issued in 2022 already 4, there's up to 8 growth permits that could still be issued in the current year. So we're seeing a lot of them come in, but don't be surprised if you see a big influx of new buildings going out in excess of more than 4, because we can, according to our ordinance, we can have up to 8 more that we can issue, because it's not specific to per year, it's specific to a 5-time year frame. We had a couple questions that were raised about the fire department report, and I don't know if you want me to touch, I'm assuming it was in reference to the fire department report in terms of using a boat. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just simply asked about, I noticed, Ralph, that you mind if I speak to Ralph?
Yeah.
I noticed that you wrote down that you used the boat from the boatyard to respond to a call. And my only point is, I think if we're going to contract with a private business or a private individual, I think we should do that. I think if we intend to use a boat that is not owned by the town of Quebec, it probably should be an agreement in place.
So I called Paul and talked to him because I figured it'd be better to go directly to him than figure out, who used the boat, because I hadn't, after being, out of the office for a few days, the fire department report was the first thing that came to mind about who might have used it. And he said that to him for the last 15 years as, operating that business, Ralph has been one of his employees who is a volunteer firefighter. And he just, it's kind of the few rare occasions where that's happened, his employee just hopped in his employee boat and used it, and there was never the question of whether town would be liable if anything had happened. He was covered because he was still on his time, and that's kind of where.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Ralph specifically. I'm talking about calling other town employees if they go with him in a boat that isn't.
Well, and he said that has not happened, or he's not put it in a position where.
No, we've had town employees and other firefighters and EMTs.
Yeah.
And that's the intent.
Well, fire, yes, but I mean, as in other town employees outside of volunteer firefighters were with you.
I'm not making a big deal out of it. I'm just suggesting if we intend to, as a town, subcontract, lease, rent, whatever the term is that we think about.
It's borrowed because we, as a town, we've been talking about, we're the biggest town, biggest island in Casco Bay. We're the only town in Casco Bay that doesn't own a boat. We don't have a boat, we're the only ones. We're responsible, yeah,
What kind, when you say we, you mean the town, the fire department?
the town. The town doesn't have a boat in the water. I don't know of another town in Casco Bay that doesn't have a boat for emergency services at all. We've talked about it for years. We depend on a smaller town, Long Island, to respond to everything for us around the island and the whole island, where we collect a lot of taxes from. We have there's some liability there. We have to be able to respond there. That's, they pay taxes, they expect to get something for that. This is the only thing it's not something we contracted, this isn't something, the ideal situation, but it's the failure of the town to even provide us a boat to be able to respond anywhere with. So that's just the best that we can do, that we work with at this point.
We have a simple agreement with CTC, which is also to maintain ranch and float, I understand. But we have a simple memorandum of understanding with them for the rescue runs. I think that's all I'm suggesting, thinking about.
Okay with that.
That is all I have.
All right. You have something else, Mark?
One more thing, I noticed in the harbor master's report, he spoke about Cousins Island float, and that is a kind of a mess over it. I don't think we'll solve that easily, if ever. But, Yarmouth does allow, what we do or whatever, some of the mooring holders to tie up at our float over there, and I think, it adds to the congestion and the problem, so at some point, maybe, bringing that up again to Yarmouth, because we have brought it up before, and it's just sort of, they have an ordinance that doesn't allow 16-foot boats at their floats, so they go to our float. That's probably something to think about. Thank you.
Karen?
Yeah, I think that would be something the Coastal Waters Committee should come up with a recommendation. I was at a meeting a couple of years ago where they did just that. I don't know what happened to it once it was submitted, but it seems like that's their role. And, I think they've been trying, but maybe we can ask them anew to sort of make a recommendation on how to deal, because frankly, Cousins is a mess, I agree. And it's frustrating that it's really large boats that are not residents that are tied up there.
I think we need to start with the Yarmouth Standing Committee going.
Yeah,
Talk to them about that. So
yeah,
that would be good.
I think we should decide what we need before we talk to Yarmouth, so I think it would be better to have a general idea of what we want before we meet with them. I think they've already done it once, so.
I also had a question about the harbor master's report, and that he talked about how he towed 4 large boats off the float and moored them, and I just wondered, number one, he doesn't have a boat, how did he do that? And he said it was the owner operator's responsibility to get a hold of it, and is that just common practice that does he just, if someone's there too long, he moves them, and that makes me think about the liability of that, of moving, I don't know, he said they're large boats, I don't know, but that would be kind of not good for the town if they were damaged or whatever.
I know he had a family boat that he was using for a brief period of time where he communicated with me that he asked people to move it on the mooring, and then, he would bring them in and things like that. But I could find out more details about the towing part.
How do you know who owns it?
So if there is a tie-up sticker, that makes it easy, because there's only, less than 100 to go through those. If it has a registration, he will ask us, and occasionally we'll look up based on registration for inland fisheries and wildlife data, and it'll pop up the name.
So he doesn't have access.
He does it.
Yes.
Speaker question. Yep. Speaker, do you have access to that information for the entire state or just for country?
The entire state, for both registrations, yes, the entire state.
Thank you.
Do you have a question about 501? No?
What is in the agenda, right?
Oh, yes. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Moving on. You all done?
Yes, I'm just trying to write that.
Want to go down a bit?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, moving on to regular business, 22-078. To hear an update and take any necessary action about the engineering services between Baker Design Consultants and the town of Big Island as they were signed July 16, 2021.
So, the agreement for the professional engineering services that was provided in the packet was the agreement that was signed prior to me becoming the town administrator by our previous town administrator to do some work down at the Hook and determine a short-term solution, emergency repair plan. And so the presentation that was provided in April 6th was as a result of this work. And following that presentation and everything else that transpired after that, we never got an official finalized report from Barney Baker, who was the person in charge of these providing these services. So since then, he has started working for another company, which is GEI Consultants, and he has not provided us with a final report. In July, when I asked him for it again, he came with a proposal to say that if we wanted to keep things with where they stood and not receive the final report, including the CAD files, then what he would do is he wouldn't expect any money, no payment for his services, and just kind of cut the relationship where things stood. You asked me to put this on the agenda item to have a further discussion to determine whether, yes, you want to proceed with getting the final report from him or just kind of leave things where they are. I've communicated with him briefly in the last couple of weeks to try to get some additional information from him, copy of the survey, things like that, to help with the Indian Island discussions, and there was very little information that he was able to provide. When I asked if he had the files available, he said that that's something that, if provided, would come at cost. So.
Bob?
Could you repeat, go back like 6 or 8 sentences? You said if we wanted to just accept some documents or data.
So the documents that would be accepted would be the presentation that he gave on April 6th and that PowerPoint and any drawings or photos, and then the survey that I forwarded, that would be the extent of it. So the CAD files and then his final proposal would not be provided unless we want him to finish and then payment for the services.
Because you have a sense, if you look at the page 7-9, the budget fee estimate, any information from Barney as to which of those items you would consider completed?
Under the scope of work,
Task description there, budget estimate.
Page 7 of 9, budget fee estimate, emergency repairs and grant research, phase 1.
So background depth. So the first number of things were completed. My
Use
guess,
item numbers, please.
100, 200, 300, 400. Under the design development, that's probably where you would come into play with, photographs, aerial mapping, so that I think is, from my understanding, he has a lot of this completed, but he hasn't been able to compile everything. And because he's transitioned to a different firm, he hasn't had the time to compile everything. So like when I asked him for the CAD files, she said that this would be, it would require the town to pay for this work $4,108 aside liability waiver before passing the information on. So for us to get the CAD files, it would be $4,000.
Well, it's kind of, did he actually say that?
Yes,
If we wanted the CAD files, it would be $4,100.
yes.
The reason I'm asking the questions is, I look at this two ways. One, anytime we enter into a good faith negotiation or contract relationship with any supplier, we need to honor our portion of it. They need to honor their portion of it. Barney has made a suggestion as to one resolution for this contract that was, you could look at it as being very generous on his part, or you could look at it as he simply wants to get away from it because he's busy with other, and that's what he said, that he was busy with the other. So that's, for me, that's one consideration, is the moral obligation of a contractual relationship, if you will. The second consideration for me is that there's data that we don't have that would be of value to us. And I don't think it's the entire thing, and I also think he doesn't want to complete the entire thing. So my suggestion is if we can come up with, my conversation piece is if we can come up with a list of the things we want in a way that enables us to give him some money for work he's already done easily, that might be a happy path in how we're in the situation. I'm putting that out there for discussion. I'm not making a motion.
So I know that Indian Island would like a lot of the information that he's provided too. And so his total cost was $18,493, and that would have been essentially split with Indian Island. So you're looking at a $10,000 cost for the whole thing for the town portion.
But again, the whole thing included the final report. He hasn't done the final report. He doesn't want to do the final report. So it should be something less than 18,000, maybe. That's what I'm considering.
Karen?
Yeah, so one thing I want to clarify is that of the cost Indian Islands agreed to pay half, is that right? And they did say in one of our previous meetings that they really want this information. Frankly, it covers a lot more there. I mean, the beaches there.
The survey. You should take.
Right, but there's a lot of other information. I think, I think it's important that the town get the survey and design information. Also, we had a town meeting referendum based on this particular plan, and it was specifically referenced in the referendum. So I think that plan needs to be in the record for everyone. And, I think, and I'd like to see to get the data in a CAD file so that other future projects on that property could use it. And I'm sure Indian Island feels the same way. I think there's not super urgency in terms of the timing. So, I mean, I think we can work with Barney on that. I'm not sure we need a formal report, maybe more. He had a preliminary report that's, I can't remember, he gave it to the select board maybe in January, and, something similar to that format where he summarizes what his presentation was on April 6th, and then a data package that goes with it. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be more than that in my mind, but I think it does need to kind of be summarized in a coherent way, because we did vote on it at town meeting, a referendum, and I think it's important, and I think the data is, it would cost us a fair amount of money to go back out and collect that data and, more time. And it's likely we're gonna need it. I mean, I hope we're gonna need it. That's my opinion.
Any other comments?
I think that, that's all well and good. My worry is that the data that is collected, is it truly what we need? Based on what he gave us for a presentation, there are a lot of holes, and he did say, afterwards that he was busy and he was moving on to another company, and I understand that, but it still wasn't, a really good report.
No, but the basic topographic information, which is very site specific, would be very helpful to have for all parties, because as Bob knows, I tried to generate some maps, and without that detailed data, you have to do some pretty gross estimates. So I think that specifically would be helpful to pin down some of the elevations that we need to know in order to do anything out there relative to shoreline zone and some of the other features. So I think the goal, my personal goal would be primarily to get the data, but I also think we owe it to the community to have kind of just a summary of what the proposed design was, so so we don't, frankly, repeat ourselves again.
So I understand what you're saying. There's, the information I think would be helpful for Indian Island and for us to have in our records. Looking at is the fee estimate, budget fee estimate on page 7, that's always, line item 600, line item 700, permitting review. Obviously, there's no permitting review that was done. This is after the fact permitting, and the grant research, for sure the grant research was never done. Unless
He did things in terms of like looking at what kind of grants could be available, and so I think he's researched grant opportunities that may be available, which he determined weren't.
So another variable for me, the PDF of the survey that he sent to Vika at the request of the people working on the Indian Island Committee did not include survey points that were the key ones we need for the work of hand. I don't think that means he doesn't have the survey data for the full extent of the property. I think he just sent a quick snapshot of the PDF. And so a question would be, if we could see the full extent of the survey data. We need that survey data. And we could pay another surveyor to do it. That's going to involve time, but it seems sort of wasteful to pay somebody new to do it when the survey's been done. And it seems like paying Barney for the survey data, if in fact it's the data we need, would be a good faith effort in the right direction of paying for something we need that he has, if it's the right data. But again, the picture that he sent stopped at both ends where I didn't think it would have stopped. So I'm not quite sure what that PDF was. But to Carol's point, to know the answer to that, we either need a picture of the extent of the survey to know whether in fact the actual data, the DWG file, would be of value to us.
Sure.
Just for a technical note, even if it doesn't cover all the areas we need, it would be still a lot cheaper in the long run to have that data. We could extend, maybe control, and we could extend the survey. So I think, to me, it's a no-brainer to ask for the survey information, and I believe Indian Island feels the same way. And personally, I think he did do quite a bit of work. I wouldn't quibble with him about the cost, because we're talking, I think he did most of the tasks that are on this list, and I think I think he sounds like he needs a little time. I think, maybe he could send us the survey data and complete his memo when he has time. And, but we should probably make it clear, by some date so that it's clear, because we've been, we've spent a fair amount of time trying to get this submitted.
Their motion.
That the town administrator asked Mr. Baker for a revised bill for the work completed and proposed timeline by which he could package up the work completed, including a summary, if not a full report.
Second.
I don't know if you guys need a motion, because there's an agreement that's already been signed. So do we want to just
I'm responding to
have him just ask, so he knows that he's waited to hear from me.
Right.
So it's either, do I just email him and say, yeah, we want the full report?
Yeah.
In the meantime, can we get the CAD data and then the detailed survey? And then,
Everybody's okay with that?
Yeah, what I would suggest is we could contact him and say we'd like the digital CAD files as soon as practical for him. And if you could please prepare a memo summarizing.
I can communicate with them,
Right.
try to work with them.
I don't
to
think
get the
we
rest of
need
their time
a
to that.
20-page report. I think we just need a summary, and as long as he is clear with him. But I would suggest we give him a date that we'd like to have the report by, give him a couple months. Which should be.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna suggest, is give them a date, because if, you remember, we asked for data over and over and over again last fall and last winter. And I know he was, transitioning to it, but it took a long time to get anything.
November 1st.
Yes, that's.
Mark,
And so if we contact him and give him a date for supplying this information and summary report, are we now suggesting or agreeing to pay this amount in full?
I think we should with that. If he's not providing the full report that was promised, it shouldn't be the full number. It should be something.
all right, any other comments? All right, moving on. Next agenda item, 22-079, hear an update regarding the resiliency resolution grant and to take any necessary action.
So
I'll pass it
I,
on to Karen.
yeah, so I sent a memo along with the proposed resolution. So the state, I mean, basically to summarize the memo with people in the audience is the state of Maine has a program as part of their governor's, policy on innovation the future. Basically, they have a program called the Climate Resiliency Partnership that municipalities can participate in. And, a number of municipalities have already signed up, and there's quite a few that are enrolling as we speak. And almost every community in our midst has already enrolled. So we're recommending, so Vika and I have been working with Abby Roach from the Island Institute to kind of go through the steps that are required in order to enroll in this program, which basically is something called the self-assessment, sort of like, what have you done today? What are your needs? And then a second part of it is sort of identifying what things could be done, what are the, so there are, it isn't like, so there is a funding program that's associated with this. So there's a community action grant, but you cannot access those funds unless you're enrolled in the program. And it's really to, I would say, encourage communities to really look at climate-related concerns in the community. And communities are using for all different kinds of things. Some is, looking at their, transportation structure, and, if they want to electrify transportation, do they have adequate, infrastructure for that? Other people are looking at sea level rise concerns, peers just like us. Some communities are looking at, groundwater concerns related to climate change. So there's a somewhat specific but pretty broad list of options that the community can apply for funding for, and then the community can apply for partial funding if they want to do something that's totally off that list. It's been described to me or explained to me that, it would definitely improve our eligibility for other kinds of grant programs, in particular, for example, for Stone Pier infrastructure improvements to enroll in this, program. So, and the grants are a minimum of 5,000, maximum of 50,000. They're offered twice a year, and you can get more than one grant. And so some communities are already applying for the second grant, and we're really going to try, because try to get the grant application in for this round, which has to be submitted this month. Part of the process is to have a community workshop and sort of get community feedback on, what the community thinks are the most important priorities. And a number of communities have already completed those. We need to do that before we can enroll in the partnership. And we've scheduled both an in-person workshop here on Sunday morning and then a virtual workshop on Tuesday evening to try to give even seasonal residents an opportunity to participate. So that's where it stands. So the elements that, we've completed are the self-evaluation and list of community actions. We're doing the public workshop essentially this weekend, and then the selectmen have to adopt a municipal resolution, and the state has given us guidance on the language for that resolution, and Kim Hamlin and I worked together on this. We modified the language to make it a little bit more specific to Shadate, but there are some required language that we incorporated. The one thing that we can't put in the resolution tonight is really the outcome of these workshops in terms of community priorities. So as I said in the memo, what I'm suggesting is, we discuss, whether people support this and whether they want to make any changes to the resolution as written. And then once we have probably 3 top priorities, that's generally how the communities are doing it for the resolution, whether it's, water, whether it's sea level rise concerns, whether it's, looking at our greenhouse gas emissions or transportation. We can add that to the resolution and I can circulate it after that for signature. So that's kind of the process I'm proposing. It's not optimal, but just would optimally, we should have had the workshop first, but because our next selectmen's meeting is after the grant deadline, that's where we're at. And the Island Institute provides, they have received a grant from the state to provide support to us as we go forward. And so that's, and they have been helping us in this process. And Vika and I started probably last fall. I don't know, it's been at least 6 months, maybe more, that we've been working on this, but I kind of think we need to just do it.
Yeah, we've been at it for a while.
And just a point of clarification, you said that you want to hold a workshop on Sunday, and the 10th is a Saturday.
Oh, sorry, 11, but it is on the website. I think,
Yeah,
as
it's
11.
on our website.
Okay, I just didn't know
Yeah, sorry, that's my
which
mistake.
one was wrong,
That's a
and
typo.
now what time?
So there's a workshop Sunday morning from 8:30 to 9:45. The goal is to finish before church. And then Tuesday night, it's at 7 PM, but it's virtual so that people can attend no matter where they are. And that's just to have 2 different formats, because some people prefer to come in person and some people prefer. And I'll be here for the Sunday workshop. And I think Vika and I will both attend the virtual workshop on Tuesday, and Abby, if she's available from the Island Institute.
So what kind of information are you looking for from us?
Well, I'm looking for your feedback on whether or not you are comfortable with the language in this resolution and whether you're comfortable with, once we have identified the priorities in the community, we add those to this resolution and, we would need you guys to approve and sign it. We didn't think we need a whole nother meeting to do that. I think we could do it kind of through email.
So in the draft resolution, the whereas is under the 3 dashes are examples of what might be 1 or more that come out of our workshops.
And what other communities have listed there is, transition to all LED streetlights, do a greenhouse gas survey, do a, climate vulnerability assessment. It's a pretty big range. And I think we'll have a guided discussion with the community about that.
From working on other grant opportunities, I know that piece about having something like this be awarded to you definitely sets the stage for a better chance of success on subsequent, even marginally related grants, especially it's coming from this particular office. I think it's a good thing to do. I think we should adopt this municipal resolution. I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt a municipal resolution that establishes or designates either a citizen committee or a municipal employee to coordinate activity. No,
No,
I move that we adopt the municipal resolution resolution that is attached in draft form to be finalized by our town administrator, the language to be formalized by our town administrator after the second meeting before the deadline.
Who was the second?
Yes. Did you get that? You did it.
Okay.
All right. Any comments? All in favor? Oh, wait, any comments from the public? All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor? Thank you, Carol. Lisa.
Thank you.
22-080. To hear about legislative changes presented by Senator Green and how they impacted Sugar Island.
So she's coming on the 6:30 vote. I tried timing this agenda in a way that it would work, because we're moving quicker than I thought you would tonight. So, we'll talk about the fire department and then go back to her.
Yeah, we can do that.
Everybody will do that?
All right, moving on to 22-081, to hear an update from the fire department on becoming a 501c3 and take any necessary action. Potential motion to move to allow the fire department to transfer $15,864.18 from United Bank and $8,925.65 from that savings bank, also known as the kitty account, to the Fire Rescue Association 501c3 account.
The 15,864 number, oh, kitty account, so each of those is a kitty account. Correct. Is there a detail as to what the difference is between the two of them?
One is fire department, one is rescue.
Okay.
And none of this money, to be clear, is funded by taxpayers with budget.
It's all been donations. Over the years.
About how were we able to accept donations if we weren't a 501c3, or town agencies able to accept donations?
Well, we've always done it. It's been.
I withdraw the question.
So the fire department is its own entity.
Sure.
So that, being the way that it is, it's separate from like public works, and it's a little different.
That is why we should have probably become a 501c3 when we seceded from Cumberland, because that's what Cumberland had. But we never did, because it was a terrible amount of work. We had the opportunity to receive a significant donation, but with the stipulation that we had to be a 501c3. So that's why we became 501c3 at this time.
Yeah, so to clarify, those prior donations would not have been tax deductible. In the future, tax donations would be deductible.
Correct.
And just to clarify, so that everybody understands that the 501c3 is the Shabig Fire Rescue Association, which is completely separate from the Shabig Fire Rescue Department. It's nothing to do with the town, it's a complete other entity.
So these bank accounts will not go to the auditors in the future.
Carol?
So
Sorry.
is that how, other communities operate?
Virtually every fire department, fire rescue department I've talked to, that it's a volunteer or a mixed department. Yarmouth, Cumberland, Freeport, Falmouth, Pownell, it's exactly. And this will really change nothing, how we do business. We have bylaws and everything, just like we always have. This is to formalize it, to legitimize it, if you will. We still have to vote on to spend the money and everything. It's all.
And if I can ask one follow-up question, does the 501c exist already? I mean, have you established it?
Yes, we have. And that donation has been put in.
Bob?
I was gonna ask the same question Carol asked, but I'm gonna ask it a little differently. So the other departments are organized as the fire and rescue association for the 501c3?
The other, like the other.
Yeah, all those.
Yeah, I don't know the exact name of it, but I believe that's, yeah.
It's
all-
separate from the
yeah,
town accounts.
Absolutely, completely separate. Yeah, because it's not a town entity, it's a support group, if you will, to, and the mission is to support the fire and rescue, mostly financially, to lessen the financial burden to the taxpayers. That's the mission. In a nutshell.
All right, Mark?
Yeah, so this came as a little bit of a surprise. I don't know all this information about how other departments do it. So, is it okay if I address that? So Ralphie, you said, that the 501c3 is completely separate from the fire rescue department of Shabbat.
Yes, the fire department is under the town. When we're on call, training, whatever,
Yeah,
we're employees of the town.
right.
The association is, the members end up being in the association, but it is completely separate legally and liability and all that from the town. There's nothing to do with the town.
It's like the Boosters Club in the school.
Yeah.
And so the nonprofit members of this new 501c3 are the members of the fire and rescue department. And then, so they hold meetings and decide, you know, we get this much money, like to have this equipment at this cost.
Yeah.
And some 501c3, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know a lot about some of them. They have reporting requirements, 990 forms or
Right.
something.
A
Yeah.
lot less than tax forms.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all taken care of, or will be, is being taken care of. Yes.
And so that'll be something that administratively you guys will.
Yeah, that's completely separate. If the 501c3 goes bankrupt, it has no bearing on the town. It's like the Island Hall.
Yeah.
The library. There's no liability or anything. There's nothing. It's completely different.
Thank you.
So I'd like
Go ahead, Karen.
like to make a motion that we move to allow the fire department to transfer $15,864.18 from the People's United Bank account from the fire department fund. Is that right? I mean, that's-
Yeah, I think that's in the rest of it.
And $8,925.65 from the Bass Savings Bank, also known as the kitty accounts to the Fire and Rescue Association 501 C3 account.
All right, any other comments? Public comments? All right, all in favor? All right. Yeah,
Hey, can I volunteer you to run down and Stone Fair to see if whoever was supposed to?
She's coming in now.
She is?
I just saw her.
Okay, good. I had no idea who was taking her out, but I just wanted to verify. Yes.
all right, so we're going back to line item, agenda item 22-080 to hear the legislative changes presented by Senator Green and evening. Are you ready to give your presentation, or would you like to wait a few minutes, or?
Whatever works for
Yeah,
you,
proceed.
whatever works for you.
All right. Well, I'm Bo, I'm the chair of, Adam,
Well,
Jen, the vice chair,
hi, everyone. Some
Mark
faces look
Dyer.
familiar.
Bob, and Carol.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for making time on your busy agenda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So there's a PowerPoint. Sure. I didn't know if it was going to be. Yeah. Where would you like me to sit? How about right here?
Not in the back.
Okay. So for folks who don't know me, I'm Kathy Green and I represent Shemig in the Maine Senate, and this is my last year because of term limits. I'll be moving on. And I wanted to touch base with everybody to sort of get an update on all the so I'm going to, I think, I want to stand where I can talk to everybody. Is that all right?
If you can stand close to that machine, then the people listening can hear you.
Right here. Okay. Does that work?
You can turn your back.
Does that work? Okay, great. So again, I'm Kathy Green. I represent Shebig and Long Island, and then Falmouth, Cumberland, Yarmouth, Gray, and half of the city of Westbrook. So I also chair the Appropriations Committee, so I'm very familiar with the state budget. So we're going to start out with some numbers, what came either through the federal government or through the state government directly to Shebig. So in May of 2022, Shebig was scheduled to receive its second bit of money from the American Rescue Plan Act, and that was about $18,270. As you might know, we finally reached 55% of state aid to education. So that resulted in a $10,487 increase between 21 and 22 for Shebig's K through 6 education. We also got back up to full 5% revenue sharing, which is the money that comes into the state and then gets back out to municipalities by way of formula. And from this year, the Shebig is receiving $15,300 more than last year. You might have heard we provided quite a bit of economic relief through the American Rescue Plan Act and through the budget. We sent to more than 800,000 eligible Maine working people an $850 direct relief check that came directly out of state money. That was half of our budget surplus that we decided, the governor decided to send back, and we agreed. We permanently expanded the property tax fairness credit to give eligible families and older Mainers much needed economic and property tax relief. And the maximum benefit is $1,000 for each year for under 65 and $1,500 for over 65. We provided tax credits for working families, known as the Earned Income Tax Credit. So that's going to help 100,000 Maine families. We also, you may recall at the beginning of the LePage administration, there was a income tax decrease that was paid for in large part through rolling back some retirement benefits for teachers and public employees. And we were able to reinstate that in the form of a cost of living adjustment of about $110 million out to that group of people. We also did a reduction of income taxes for retirees in the next it's going to go from 10 in the next 3 years, a $10,000 deduction where it is now, and then it'll go to 15, 20, 25,000 in the next 3 years. So that is an increase in the income tax deduction for all Maine retirees. You may have heard about the property tax stabilization program, and you folks might have some questions about it, but it's for folks who are at least 65 and that they've been folks who've been eligible for the homestead exemption for 10 years. And you're able to freeze your property tax where it is now. And then the state will make up the difference. That's a very new program. I have to say it was not what I would call fully baked and really fully flushed out when it passed. So I predict it will change a little bit. Right now, there's no means testing, meaning it doesn't matter what assets or property or income you have, it's purely age. And I suspect that I won't be there, but I would predict that that might change in the future. We did a lot for education in this last couple of sessions. For the first time ever, as I said, we got up to 55%. We also established a rainy day fund just for education so that we can keep some money on hand for the future in case revenues dip. Did I mess that up? Sorry, thank you. We made big investments in career and technical education all across Maine. Though the equipment and technology in some of those programs was actually, some of it went back to World War II and the Vietnam War. It was really outdated. And so we were able to make a lot of investments there. You may have heard that during the pandemic, the federal government did a lot of things, but one of them was to provide free school meals for everybody in Maine schools and in all schools. And in the state of Maine, we were the second state to do it, but one of about 5 states that's keeping that up. And we're using Maine dollars to make sure that every kid who goes to public school in Maine gets free breakfast, lunch, and that sort of thing. We're doing 2 years of free community college for kids who were affected by the pandemic. So anyone who graduated or earned a GED from 2020 to 23 will have the last dollar paid for, meaning if they're eligible for other scholarships or benefits, that whatever they have to do to get to free, we will make up the difference. It's going to be an interesting kind of experiment to see what happens, because there are a lot of states who've been toying with free community college for a while. And I think we're hoping that over the 4 years, we'll be able to gather a lot of data, see what kind of kids have taken advantage of it and how much you have to go full time. So you have to earn a degree, how many kids come out with a degree, and how those kids fan out into the workforce. So that'll be an interesting thing to reflect on after the 4 years. Once again, we've kept in-state tuition for the UMaine system frozen, and we expanded the Opportunity Maine tax credit, which is an income tax credit you can get on college debt in Maine, and with the individual benefit went up to from $2,000 to $2,500 up to a $25,000 lifetime limit. And actually, the year before last, we increased the Maine State grant to $2,500. So it went from $1,000 to $2,500. So we're doing a lot to try to keep Maine kids, to try to educate Maine kids, keep them here, keep them in our workforce. You may have heard a lot about PFAS and PFAS remediation. These are chemicals that are popping up in all sorts of circumstances and all over Maine. And really, it's one of those things, I think, that we're at the beginning of trying to figure it out. You know, I think in 10 or 20 years, we'll know a lot more about what the impacts are. And as you might know, the Attorney General has filed a lawsuit for the manufacturers of it. But at the moment, there's a lot of farmland around Maine where folks are discovering these chemicals, which then render the farmland contaminated. And so we're setting up funds to clean it up, to help farmers deal with the loss of productivity. And we've got about $100 million invested in that. Now, I do think the lawsuit is important because I don't think the taxpayers of Maine should have to be paying for this for all these years. So Eventually, it'll be like, asbestos or other sorts of known toxins where there'll probably be, lawsuits and settlement money, and the settlement money will come back and repay the state of Maine. We've also done a lot to help folks who are living along the coast to protect their homes and afford flood insurance with rising sea levels. And we also set up money in the executive branch so that towns and cities around the state can work with the state and get grants to try to plan for climate change in their communities. And if you're interested in that, I can help you, connect to that if you'd like. We've done a lot of prescription drug reform. We've improved access to contraceptives and improved coverage for contraceptives. We've provided emergency access to life-saving medications like insulin. And we have put together a group to study long-term solutions for prescription drug reform. You might think we just spent a ton of money. We did spend a ton of money, but we did not increase any taxes. And like I said, we gave half of the surplus back to taxpayers. And we also grew our rainy day fund up to $896 million, which is the highest level it's ever been in Maine history by far. Election laws, we've done a lot to protect ballot security. To further ensure the security of our ballots, this year we passed a lot of strengthened Maine chain of custody laws to guard against any outside political interference. So there's now very strict rules about the ballot staying under the control of the Secretary of State. There's no third parties allowed to come in and have access to the ballots. We established something called semi-open primaries. That's going to start in 2024. That means that if you're unenrolled, you can walk into a primary and pick a ballot, and a Republican or a Democratic ballot, and you can vote in the primary for one or the other without having to enroll in that party. So that'll be in 2024. About a third of Maine voters are unenrolled. So, and then we also set up 5 new positions in the Secretary of State's Election Bureau that are by definition nonpartisan, like a lot of state government is. We have a big turnover coming in town clerks. So it's going to provide training to town clerks. It creates a process for citizens to report concerns about election security, and does quality control throughout the year at different towns, sort of an ongoing audit system. And then in 2024, the Secretary of State will be able to do the first post-election audit statewide. Energy relief, obviously we can't do enough, but we have provided electric rate relief for small businesses worth up to $3,000 for eligible small businesses. We've increased access to the Home Energy Assistance Program. We passed some laws to try to help keep more accountability with the ratepayers, or with the providers and utility companies. So they're going to face new penalties for persistent problems with the ratepayers. That was a lot of information in fairly short amount of time, but I'd be delighted to take any questions or hear your feedback in any way that the chair sees fit.
So thank you for coming. We forgot to introduce Vika as our town administrator.
Hi.
Chris is our town clerk.
Hi.
So does the board have any questions? We'll start with the board, then we'll move on to the public.
Whatever, it's your meeting, whatever you
So
want.
Mark?
Yeah, on page 4, 4, number 7, the last statement is, we protected Maine residents amid rising sea levels, and allowed them to purchase affordable insurance. So what did the state actually do? Try to hold insurance companies to a certain standard? Because with the FEMA map still being a little bit outstanding, if you will. It's interesting.
Honestly, I would have to get back to you on that. I
Yeah.
don't have it right off the top of my
That's
head,
okay.
but I'd be happy to,
I find that
follow
an
up.
interesting statement.
Yeah.
Because if that's true, that's good.
yes, yes. I mean, I know we did something and
I mean, to minimize it, but.
no, it's important for this community, for sure. So I will get back to you.
You may remember your office was very helpful, back when I was on the county board, helping us track down what was going on with LD 2003, because
Yes,
the fur was flying fast and furious. with that
yes.
one. Has the legislature provided any funds to help towns adapt, adopt, and understand 2003, or whatever MRSA it became?
So so that's just for everyone else. LD 2003 was a very, very large sort of omnibus affordable housing bill. And it started really huge and got really winnowed down. And
Still very big.
yes, it's still very big, and hopefully impactful. But I think that probably, this would have been under the old state planning office that we don't have anymore. So I don't know if we provided anything directly to towns, but I can figure, like technical assistance.
So I'll see you.
Yep, I will figure that out.
Any other questions?
I actually had like 3 slides on LD 2003 that I cut out because I didn't want to take up too much time. So I have a lot more information about that.
Sure.
Yeah, so, a couple things, just to let you know that we do have PFAS in school water supply and
Oh, okay.
recreation center water supply here, so we're an affected community.
All right.
And other than identifying it, we haven't, we haven't progressed further to find out if it's in public or private water supplies. Then the other question I have, in terms of energy relief or related to that is, I've heard in the news concerns about a fuel oil shortage in the Northeast. And I was just wondering if you had any update on, I understood the governors had met, sort of discussed that. We do have a leak program or LD for whatever it is.
Lighting.
Lighting, so I was just wondering what you could tell, if we have community members that are struggling this year, both in terms of supply and cost.
I think I can't speak to the supply issue.
Okay.
But certainly, I mean, I know that, and this might not apply to this community, but I know that if you are on a regular monthly plan, that the distributors go to, those folks, at least in the past, when we used to have shortages, the folks who are on regular monthly deliveries go to the top of the list rather than the folks who do, sort of randomly, fill up here and there, or try to pay cash and, go to different distributors and, so that would be one thing, if you can swing that, is to get set up so that you have a regular monthly supply with one distributor. And then in terms of LIHEAP, we did increase it, but I don't know by exactly how much. But again, these are all great questions. I'll get back to your town administrator.
Any other questions?
Comment. So in reference to the property tax stabilization program that was discussed and the affordable housing, Maine Municipal Association has kept close contacted the state and has updated municipalities, and we do have kind of 1 to 2 page summary of those laws for anybody that's interested. We're happy to provide them in the office, as well as the applications for the property tax stabilization.
I was gonna make mention of Maine Municipal Association, but they, they do that as part of their general work, but it's not a funded technical assistance program, but.
They've done nothing on 2003 so far. I don't call them over. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
Still on page 3.
Yeah.
I do have a question about monies that will be available for towns for fixing infrastructure or for the sea level rise and all that. We're looking into fixing our snow pier that you landed at.
Yep.
And then possibly some other infrastructures that need some repair.
sure.
I didn't know what kind of grant opportunities or what kind of help the state could give us.
Well, there is the federal money that the federal government did for infrastructure would be probably your best, and that's gonna mostly go through the MDOT in terms of bridges and that sort, or wharfs and that sort of thing. I am trying to, and also I would say MEMA, the Maine Emergency Management Agency would probably also have more information about how to get federal money. And again, I can follow up.
My other question is the free lunch for kids. So what does the town have? Does the town have to, or the school system, have to do something to the state? How's that done?
We put $30 million a year into the Department of Education so that the state is covering the cost of all the meals. So basically what it means is during the pandemic, kids have not had to bring in lunch money and, or file any paperwork for free or reduced lunch. And so that's just going to continue. So whatever has been happening over the past, what happened last year was federally funded because of the pandemic. This year and going forward is going to be state funded. But as far as how the kids are going to experience it, it's going to be the same as last year, which is they're going to go in and they're going to have their meals, and that's that. Just like they have their books and their buses and their whatever. So the only thing I would say, though, that's come up as a result of this, one of those unintended consequences, is that there is a lot of federal funding that goes to schools with low-income students, low-income communities, based on the applications for free and reduced lunch. So what's happening is that the places in Maine where those schools are getting those monies, they're called Title I funds. It's challenging to get all those forms filled out, but it's really important that the form that was fundamentally for food is no longer necessary for food, but it is necessary to bring in federal dollars based on the rate of poverty in any given community, school community.
Federal
So
dollars for other expenditures.
exactly, just for education, just for various education programs that get funded in low-income neighborhoods by the federal government. So if anybody out there is listening, go ahead and fill out the forms, but your children don't need them to have breakfast and lunch.
There's a follow-up on that. Our school has 9, 10 children in it. is there, like, not looking at poverty way, but more or less the amount of kids that are there? Is there any grants or anything that you know of that the town can apply for to try to help with that?
To help with food or just general education?
Just general education, just to, try to fund some of that, some of the schools, and try to negate some of the tax burden on it.
On property tax. Sure. There are programs, there are grant programs through the Department of Education, for art and music and, things like that. But it's a mixture right now of 55% paid by the state, the other 45% paid by the property taxpayers. And then there's a formula of how that works out based on the value of the property. So Shabby gets, it goes through that formula and gets the amount every year. It's called a 929, something like that, a form that comes out of the DOE every year. So if you're looking for generally more money annually, what I reported is what you're gonna get this year. Other than that, I would say you can contact the DOE and see if there are, grants for other special things that you're interested in.
Karen?
So along the same lines, are you familiar with I think it's state money available for, modernization, modernization for both municipal and state?
Yeah, through Efficiency Maine.
Yeah, so what is that program? And,
We put a ton of money into that program recently. I would have to, look it up and get Efficiency Maine.
so it's an
Yeah.
efficiency name.
Yeah,
So that's both for municipal buildings and school buildings?
we put, over the last 2 years, we put about $500 million into the school renovation fund. So, and if they're energy upgrades, then Efficiency Maine helps as well.
Any other questions from the board? All right, I'd like to open it up to the public. Are there any questions? Yes.
For primary elections, is there still same-day registration? And regardless of how you registered, can you then still decide which ballot to adopt?
If you're registered as a Democrat, you get the Democratic ballot. If you're registered as a Republican, you get the Republican ballot. If you're not registered, this is in 2024, you walk in and you pick one or the other.
But you can't come in registered as a Democrat and then vote for the Republican ticket.
Correct.
Thank you.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Can you stay unregistered? Like if you want to decide at the election year which party you want to vote with?
Yeah, and that's the point of doing this, is that if you want to participate through 2024, if you wanted to participate in a primary election, you had to register for the party well in advance. That's no longer the case. You don't have to register for a party, but you can only pick one or the other. You have to walk, when you go in, if you're unenrolled, you pick a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot as of 2020.
Any other questions? The board? All right, I'd like to thank you very much for coming through that.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a tremendous, I just have to conclude by saying it's just been an incredible experience representing. It's so fun to ride over on the boat that we got to go see get launched, and it's just been such a treat. And I feel so happy to be here after COVID, because I didn't come at all during COVID. It's so sad not to go to Long Island or Shabby. So I just want to thank you all. It's just really been an incredible honor and privilege, and it's so nice to get to know this community, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
So moving on. Agenda item 22-082 to appoint a select person to the Yarmouth Standing Committee. So right now, Jen is on there. Is there anybody that would be interested? Apparently, they haven't met yet. So that's another challenge there. You don't? All right, so Bob. We do, all right. So we have a motion.
I make a motion that we appoint Bob Ernest to the Yarmouth Standing Committee.
Second. I'll second. All right. Any discussion? Yes, Mark?
I would just like to say that I decided to remove myself from that group. Not because I don't see the importance of it. I'm trying to simplify myself a little bit. I'm so busy these days. And I'd like to focus on finishing up the road and some of the other infrastructure. I will say, I think we have some challenges still with our relationship with the town of Yarmouth. I don't think they're insurmountable, but we haven't made much progress, in my opinion, in quite a few years over there. So I would encourage some very open and candid discussion with Yarmouth, specifically about at least the wharf and the float system over there. As far as possibly upgrading that at some point. If we're gonna look at upgrading the stone wharf with longer ramps and floats and going to possibly like we just heard, going to the Department of Transportation. I think that's what you said, Kathy. Probably those types of grants for ADA and stuff that comes from DOT. So I would encourage some conversation in that direction. I would also encourage to consider involving the big transportation company in some of those discussions. Thank you.
Sure.
So I just am not sure, the standing committee, is that two selectmen, I'm not clear.
Two selectmen.
Jen and Bob, Jen, you're saying, and if one was the last time you met?
I've never met them.
Okay. Before there was COVID and then, so it's been years.
Yes.
3 years? Okay. That's all.
Any other comments?
Sounds like pretty easy work.
I was gonna say, committee, I've never been.
Yeah. Any comments from the public? All right. We'll vote. All in favor? No. All right. All right, next agenda item, 22-083, to appoint a select person to the golf course committee. Currently, Jen is on that one also. Carol.
I'm not volunteering. I just want to know, what
Too
is,
late. You're-
what is
you're
the golf
running.
course committee and what is its function?
To just have discussions about, the road and, the tee properties and stuff that surround this whole. Eric?
Jen, do you have any interest or desire to continue to do it?
I'm continuing. It's just Mark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Bob? All right. Have a motion?
I make a motion that we appoint Bob Ernest to the golf course committee.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Mark?
Again, sorry, but I decided I wanted to simplify my schedule, to move myself. But there has been some hard discussion already. I think probably it's within reach of some sort of a consensus or a conclusion rather. Probably won't be without still some, not adversarial, but differences of opinion from both sides. I think it's probably a little closer to possible conclusion in some fashion now that we have at least a solid draft of a possible stone tier, stone wharf plan. Whether the stone wharf stays the way it is right now or becomes the draft plan is pretty much out there now for consideration at some point, possibly by this community. I don't think that the golf course can say, we have no idea what you're doing. The road may still need some design work, but I think we can easily accomplish that.
Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? All right. So, all in favor? I would like to thank Mark for his work on the Yarmouth Standing Committee. What the one time you met with and the golf course committee, of course. I'll work on into that. Thank you very much. All right, next agenda item, 22-084, to discuss Bennett's Cove Road in Barbie and take any necessary action. I'll put it out there. I know there's a lot of people that, a few people here that live in that area. We know you. I know that there's some controversy, you know, like, I just want, this is an idea discussion. You can put your points in there, but please keep the points at a minimal. But basically, we're looking for solutions. I'd like to open it up to the board first, and then we'll go up to the public. Anybody want to make a comment? Mark?
Been a tremendously busy number of years, and this year has been really one of the most busy years that I've seen on this island, construction vehicle wise. Then you mix in our transfer station vehicle needs, with changing out the dumpsters and people bringing more moving vehicles back and forth. And it's been quite an array of different vehicles coming and going. So, but a couple of things that I've noticed down there is, you know, and I've noticed many things, and I've talked with some of the residents down there about them. Staging of vehicles that are going back to the mainland is not an easy solve on the face at least. But we might want to start with at least that for the conversation, in my opinion, with the barging company. In other words, is there any way to improve the communications between the barge captains and the person that schedules the truck and or the truck driver? In other words, it's challenging for us, and we know the game. We're in the construction business, and sometimes, you know, I don't know if I should send the truck driver down there, and I call the barge captain, and I don't get a clear answer. So that's challenging. So staging of vehicles, I've noticed, has been difficult because, you know, the truck drivers, he or she, they don't know what to do. And they're afraid they're gonna get left. So they want to get down there and they want to get in line, and then they don't know what to do when they get down there, and then people come to unload more vehicles, and then everybody's away. So we should probably think about that at some point. And then one of the biggest complaints I think we've been hearing from some of the residences, the backing of vehicles, sometimes up the entire road, and, you know, whether we can do anything or whether we should think about that, I don't know. But, you know, those two things are just two things that I've been noticing this year.
I don't think there's a whole lot that can be done about the number or the amount of traffic that goes through their house. But anywhere on Island is busier, anywhere on the mainland is busier. But I would think that just in looking at the area, there should be some easy fixes that as a town, I would think that it could be cleaned up a little. You know, there's a junk boat down there, it seems to me that it could be easily, you know, made some small improvements as far as making more room for these trucks to turn and, you know, not have to back all the way up. I don't know what the right of way or the, you know, how much land is it all is, but I would think that as a town, we should be looking at.
Carol.
So I remember the letter we got from Jackie recently. Other than that, that's the extent of my understanding of the problem down there, to be honest, at least since I've become a selectman, but maybe you could fill me in on, you know, how the trips are scheduled and what, you know, what's the frequency of trips down there compared to, for example, Stonepier? Is there more barging traffic going through than it's both in Stonepier generally? Larger vehicles, but you have a sense of how much more?
No.
And how do the trips get scheduled through there? I mean, does the town have any involvement in that?
No.
Well, for the town.
Well, yeah, the town schedules their own material drop-offs, vehicle transportation, but that's about the limit of the town's responsibility.
And it's all private barging that's done.
Correct.
there.
Yep.
There's also boat launching that's done with private parties.
Yeah.
Somewhat limited basis, there's trap launching there by a couple of launchers using a mid-tide float loading and then high tide unloading onto the boat and then vice versa. And all that process.
And how, do you have a sense of how more, you know, how much increase in traffic has been? You guys? Oh,
So if you look at the revenue in the last couple of years, even looking at like new growth permits that were issued, previous 3 years, there was 1 or 2 or 1 a year. This year, 4. So that's 4 new houses that have gone up. So imagine the level of barging. And there, you look at the revenue that we've taken in for renovation work. This year, for previous year, it was anticipated to take in revenue about $7,000-8,000. We took in $21,000 in building permit fees. So with that level of construction that's happening, in addition to public transfer station, we are asking them to barge a dumpster every week. So, and we can barely keep up. We're on their schedule when it's available to them. So they're barging out here. And I believe my understanding is basically any availability that they have within schedule in accordance to other locations that they're going to at any opportunity they have in high tide. So just from the town's revenue that we've seen increase, where that's where the majority of the bargaining comes from. It's been significant in the last 3 years.
Yes, Paul. Historically, 18 years ago, there were 2 barges, both similar in design to the Lionel plant that served this community at Venice Cove. One of those barges left the area with Penobscot Bay. Then we had 1 barge, and then business continued to increase. Then the plant went out and bought another larger barge. And they are now, as I understand it, having a hard time keeping up with their business, even with the one that was half of what was present 18 years ago plus the newer, larger ones. They're running on Saturdays, occasionally they're running on Sundays, trying to keep up with all the volume they have. The amount, so I think learning in more detail about the trend in volume, not just in terms of numbers of barge runs, numbers of trucks, but also what is the material, how much of it is construction material. You guys know the amount of transfer station trips that we've had to take has increased.
We've asked them to come
Logarithm.
every week, as if they could fit us in their schedule to come and change out the dumpster every week, because we're filling out that quickly that we're at the mercy of when the barge is available at this point.
And we've had to shut the transfer station down at least 3 times because we didn't have any more room. So I would suggest, where I was headed was suggesting that we start with determining what the trends are and work with work with Lionel Plant to get information from them on trends. If they can give us what for them is probably confidential business information in a way that doesn't damage their business, that would be good information to have for planning stage. I think we need to survey the area and have a survey of the road and determine what is and is not possible within the existing property boundaries, if you will. Start with that and then begin developing a proposal as to what to do, with a focus on safety and on maintaining the town's ability to run a transfer station. And thirdly, commercial traffic.
So a lot, just my comments real quick, before I go to you, Carol. So a lot of the issues I see down there is not only the increase in traffic, but there's also, it's a bottleneck. You know, it gets small there. We're asking multiple vehicles to go down the 1-lane road to get on the barge. The other that I see is the barge ramp itself, which is beach, it's not a ramp, it's a beach, is really restricted as far as height, and it makes it difficult with their boats. We've asked them to look at their ramps, and they have, but the thing is we're asking them to revamp their ramps for our island, but they serve multiple islands. Police come, I've been down there, I've been stuck on the beach, not me personally, but I've had vehicles stuck on the beach for half an hour trying to get off the ramp. Just because the incline of everything, the beach is not, you know, everything. So I would like to say what Bob said, you know, survey the area and see what the town actually owns. Clean up the area. And start in that area, focusing on trying to get it safe down there, like you said. Look into making the road larger and putting the ramp that, you know, they're not gonna get stuck on. I don't know what kind, I'm not an engineer of any sort. And then possibly leave an area on the side where a vehicle can still go down there, fishermen can go down there, safe to walk down. You know, everybody that's walked there now, not very safe to walk down there, especially if you're unsteady. So make kind of a road or a sand path, type of, whatever's permitted. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Carol.
I guess one question for Vika is in terms of besides our, I mean, as part of our trash disposal, is a lot of that construction?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the trash disposal, is a lot of that construction related debris? I mean, is it household?
Both,
It's both. And are we charging for construction debris?
yeah.
I mean, but are we requiring people to get their own dumpsters on site? How
Not yet.
Not yet. We just increased this year to, the fees are now double, so it used to be $35 per cubic yard, now it's 70, 75, right around there, so the fees have increased. But that's been a discussion that's come up in the past.
From a safety standpoint, I just want to reiterate what Mark said. A remote parking area with cellular communications from the barge captain to the vehicles saying, I want Hancock lumber #1, then I want 2 concrete trucks. They can control that easily with cell phones. If you had a relationship with them, you tend to call and say, where are you? And at that point, he could tell you, I want your lumber truck or your concrete truck or your transfer station truck loaded in first, second, third. I don't know where that remote parking area could be, but any place within 3 minutes, 5 minutes would be excellent.
So that's pretty much what I was thinking too, is where is this location gonna be? So, Mark?
Just very quickly, the only thing that we've ever tried to do, in my opinion, with that, and it's worked a little bit and not worked a little bit, is having them pull right off on the side of South Road from my parents' old house to the corner there where Chandler Road begins. It can clog that area up, and if they get over on that left side, and there's been a lot of rain, one truck one time settled right into the mud, and if it wasn't for help from a private individual with a very powerful backhoe, that just would have been a disaster. The only other thing I'll say, maybe I already know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. At some point, we probably should consider forming a very small group to take a look at. Have we looked at every other possible site that could be used for commercial transportation barging on this island? You took a glance at Sunset with barging. We've talked about the stone wharf. I don't see the stone wharf design that I'm seeing so far helping much in any way to take the strain off the site like Venice Cove. But all I'm saying is, at some point, we should be able to say to ourselves in the community the best that we can. At least we've looked at every other possible site. We don't know that we can develop anything else besides Venice Cove and Stonewall. That's all I'm saying.
Carol?
I was involved in a committee way back, 30 years ago, probably. We did, Gary Barney, it's a long ago. So we did look at that. There's probably some records on that. But I think there were some other alternatives. I just think, Venice was preferred, but it doesn't mean there aren't other options. And I think as a community, I feel either we need to improve the access and the safety and kind of commit to that site and, acknowledge that we're using it for intensive barging, or we should find an alternative site. We're kind of, half in and half in, but not fully up to speed in terms of infrastructure. And a while back, the town did consider some improvements there, and the DEP showed up and those were unpermitted, so they had to remove them, right? Wasn't that the deal? So I think we kind of, it deserves a serious look about whether we're going to stay there or not. And then if we are going to stay there, then we need to figure out how.
I think is there some kind of record that we can find that? Is there some way?
There's a lot of information about Venice Cove. I've spent a lot of time looking through it. Has there been anything official voted on, town decided? Not so much, but there's been a lot of discussion over the years. The information that I found basically geared towards Venice's most is what it's been, but also with the barging company, that's what their preference is for safety, and then the cost of anywhere else you go is going to increase the costs, and so that seems to be the constant thing that keeps popping up. There's a lot of information that I found about a few years ago when Public Works did the work and then had to remove the work. Yeah, it just it's looking for a needle in a haystack when you're trying to find something that's really determinate. The one definitive that I found was that the town road is 49 and a half feet wide. That's about it. So,
So Carol, real quick, so we did talk to Coley several times.
yeah, a lot of record of him writing and his opinion, his
Correct.
emails.
So
yeah.
we've had his opinion and his thoughts, you know, obviously he doesn't like to rain. If it was a decent rain down there, he could move vehicles quickly or quicker, not saying like super quick, but you know, I don't know that business. The other thing was the location of Bennett's Cove is an easy island hop for him. So it's in kind of his little circle of that he can easily get to. If we go to Bennett's Cove, due to the to Stone Pier, due to the location of it and it being so tied, the tide over there, even with the dredging, he would have to come every high tide. So that would limit his trips over here. And he said, with, you know, him doing multiple trips to the other islands, that he would only come over here maybe once a week from the Stone Pier. Because it's
Right.
further out of the way.
I'm aware.
So,
Yeah.
you know, unless he has a solely dependent trip for here.
But I do think the decision process should be the community based on the input from the, barge operator, but, community should drive the decision in the context of. I'm not saying it wouldn't be the same outcome, but it seems like we should get in the driver's seat on, if we're gonna stay there making it a better situation, or, and allowing the public process to make that determination. But I do think we need more information. We know a fair amount about Stone Pier and Sunset, but, that's,
What does the board's thought about starting a committee to look at the previous information from Bennett's?
I can look and see what we have from, I might have the old information, but I'm not in favor of another committee. I think if we were gonna tackle that, I would hire an engineer to basically do a very preliminary study on just what Bob had suggested. And I just don't think we have the capacity for another committee. Personally.
I don't know if you got to flip through it. Didn't we do that one year? Didn't we have something drawn up?
The drawing that was done was to do some remodeling down there. So there was, I couldn't find the survey showing all of, the exact town property, but there was a very large drawing done up of improving the ramp system and kind of expanding the neck part of it slightly, but it didn't have any improvement to widening the actual road. And that was a result of, there was a lot of communication a few years back where the neighbors in the area had a lot of feedback, and there was a lot of, related communication around that. But yeah, I mean, a big drawing, which I can contact that company to see if we can provide. If there's more information that we can provide, but they probably won't be able to provide us any more than, that document that I already found. So, but no contract saying, like similar to, the Barney Baker contract was, nothing similar to that, just this big huge map of.
Yeah, I don't remember who did it. I was on board when we had it done.
Yeah, and I contacted Marjorie and tried getting her picture brain. So, yeah.
All right. Any other comments? We'll move on to the public. All right. Yes.
I'm Renee Harvey. We own a house at 18 that over
also known as Ponderosa. The barging, actually, I'd like to just add to comments here, not starting where I was going to, but having heard this dialogue. When we bought our house, there was no barge, wasn't happening. And the first barge that came in at some point, we addressed it with the selectmen here and the town of Cumberland. Cumberland said it does not belong in Bennettsville. There's no question about it. It needs to go somewhere else. Stone Pier or Sunset Landing. So I do want to make that clear because there was no barging and then everybody agreed it was not appropriate. It was not a good place to land. And we have since found out for a lot of reasons it isn't. So it was always going to be temporary. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. We were told forever, temporary, temporary, temporary. Doesn't belong here. Town of Cumberland said that. And then when Shabik became a town, it was still temporary. And everybody agreed this is a lot for this little beach here. This very pristine neighborhood, residential. This is not a commercial neighborhood. It was shocking to see the first truck go. I mean, this is a little dirt road in a very quiet little neighborhood, residential. It increased and increased. We've now, skipping ahead, we've been addressing it with the selectmen. Finally, because nobody was listening to us, we hired the attorney, a specialist, somebody who's very excellent Wendy's attorney at Fairland, Scott Anderson. We met with him many times. We spent thousands of dollars. And our goal was to work it out with the town. We're worried about safety. We're worried about the environment. That beach is eroding. Go look at it. It is eroding. The eelgrass, there's a lot of evidence on this. So with the attorney drafted a letter, April 6th, 2017, and we've asked if there was any history on this. He spells it out. This is so articulate, all the way down. He sent it to the selectmen, and he sent it to the town, sent it to the town's attorney. Never heard a word from the town's attorney. No response whatsoever. Everybody's turned a blind eye on this. Meanwhile, I'm sure everybody thinks, NIMBY, not in my backyard. I don't think it should be in anybody's backyard. This traffic is dangerous. One child goes down there and it tries to go with it, backing up or going forward, who cares? So take a look at this. This is the usual. This is the usual picture down at Bennettsville. 4, 5, 6 trucks here. And I have copies for everybody here. This is not what it's supposed to be in a residential neighborhood. One child goes, who's responsible? This is a safety issue. We're liable for this. And if the town thinks it can't find another place, there is a whole lot of money on lawsuits. This is not an appropriate place for a Lionel plant or any of those people to come into a sandy beach residential that doesn't belong there. It's polluting, it's noisy, the loudspeakers on and on, and these guys can attest to that. They're living there day in and day out. I don't understand why this hasn't been looked into. What's wrong with the boatyard? What's wrong with the boatyard? People aren't living all across there. It's open on the sides. Has anybody even thought about that? Who is benefiting from this? Lionel Plant chose Bennett Cove. He was going up to Stone Pier. Cheaper for him. He's making money. We are lining his pockets. I really have a problem with this on principle. I don't think it should belong in anybody's neighborhood. Nobody wants 15 barges coming in. Trucks everywhere. I mean, it's scary and it's noisy. And everybody that's been to Bennett Cove who loves Bennett Cove, this is a recreational beach. All of you guys have been down there. It's not the same anymore. You can't even, how are you going to go down there with your little, tricycles and your thing?
Who's gonna be going in there to put in their trash? This is not our beach anymore. I agree with you, this is a community issue. This is not for Lionel Plant to dictate where he's going to go. And I think we should really dig deep and think about who's benefiting from it coming in. If he goes up the other end, he's like he always has, he's gonna charge the consumer. So charge the consumer. Why are we in Benetco subsidizing should be bargain? So I really feel strongly that if you are benefiting in any way from the bargaining, going into Benetco, recuse yourself, number one. Number two, we have a safety issue. One child dies, one pedestrian. People are getting off the ferry now and coming down to the coast to go to the beach. They're coming down there, nobody knows there's trucks going up and down the road. There's no room for a bike or 3 people walking down there, and it's fast. So the other piece of it is they leave their engines on, it's polluting, it's noisy. It's a different place. We have lost Benetco. So I want you to think about what else can we do? I don't want this in anybody's neighborhood. I'm not just saying this about Benetco. It shouldn't be in any of these neighborhoods that are residential. And everybody on this island in a residential area is going to fight. So let's find a place that's appropriate for bargaining traffic. Not, oh, let's get a turnaround. That's focusing on Lionel Plant and the trucks. So think about this, honestly. What can we do to solve this problem? It's not about Benetco. It's about money and it's about convenience. And we're not going to pay for it. So I'm sorry to be on my high horse on this, but it's been too many years. It's been years and years and years of addressing this politely. With Shabby, with Cumberland. Cumberland was all over it. They said, we're gonna help you with this, you know, whatever. Obviously, that wasn't gonna happen when we seeded, which is great, whatever. I love Shabby. I love every single part of it. I just love it. We all love it. That's why we're here. That's why we love living here. But our wonderful little pristine neighborhood is not anymore. And it's just devastating in this day and age that we're not taking into consideration safety in our environment. So I invite you to walk down there and see really what it's like. It's not the same. So I'll just add, we have people staying in our house every year who just enjoy being there. We always save a couple weeks for them. And they said this year, that all we heard was the barge. They said it was out of control. I mean, I want to differentiate. I think one barge is too much, but it is out of control. Something has to be done. It is an emergency. So, sorry. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments?
Many of you know me. I'm Jackie Trask. I live on Bennett's Cove, and I asked the selectmen to put this item on the agenda. This summer especially, I've been increasingly, I guess concerned about public safety on the road because of the increased incidence of backing up and down the road. Mostly backing all the way up the road from the vehicle comes off the barge and backs all the way up the road. But occasionally, I can only think of the one recent time, but there may have been others where I say vehicles, these are loaded trucks backing down a road that is 20 feet wide at the widest, would you say? And narrower at many points. When I drove up the road this morning and stopped at the stop sign at the intersection, I cannot imagine a truck backing into that intersection and the reduced, probably no visibility. And I could see tire tracks this morning, most likely from the fuel truck that backed up the road this morning, and it had backed into the Deer Point Road, which you know is a dark hole. You know, and all of this comes on top of my warning sign being stolen within approximately 24 hours of Mark Westcott putting it up sometime in July. I've also become aware of something maybe, well, as disturbing as what I've described. And that is that the town, I believe, is in violation of its own traffic parking ordinance down there, which I believe places the town in an extremely vulnerable legal position. If, you know, God forbid, something bad. You know, it's a beach. I mean, lots of terrible things, accidents could happen down there, and the emergency vehicle would not be able to get through those pictures that Whitney has. I have requested and will request again that the ordinance, I don't know whether you call it, be amended to prohibit backing up the road, and some way of enforcing that, which I realize is a whole, you know, big thing. And that's because I don't mind the noise. I'm used to that backing noise, but the extreme danger and risk that it creates for walkers, bikers, people in golf carts, etc. I just feel the backing, you know, can't continue. And I agree with the idea that we need to come up with some kind of alternative staging process. There really isn't one right now. It's, you know, just a jumble down there many times. And as the town has acknowledged, a dangerous jumble. You know, and I totally support what Whitney said, that it's, you know, it just isn't an appropriate location. And I would, you know, support the idea of looking into alternatives. I know that, you know, there's already been some investigation. So, I mean, you all know how passionate I am about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pam Kernan, and I also live in Banks Cove. I've lived there for a long, long time. And I work from home now since 10 years.
I do have some idea of how much the barging has increased, how big the barge has grown, how big the trucks have grown. The barge no longer lands at high tide. Very rarely does the barge make the high tide. It's always 2 hours before the tide, 2 hours after the tide, and any time in between. And this has interrupted my business calls a number of times, which until maybe 2 years ago, I'd schedule my business calls around high tide. So no calls at high tide to accommodate the impacts of the traffic. So the barging company has outgrown Bennett's Cove. Its trucks have outgrown Bennett's Cove. And some type of regulation is needed. This is a private company. We are not here to advance the interests of a private company. No one is. So some type of regulation is needed. And there's regulation that is shown here. There's a court order that prohibits barging except at certain times. And this, of course, creates a natural limit of the stone limit. We need the same thing at Bennett's Cove, and we need it very soon. The damage to the beach is really significant. The eelgrass is sheared off. It's only the eelgrass that offers protection during the climate change that it's not just intended, it's actually beginning. The only thing that offers protection is eelgrass. And it's sheared off and worn away, significantly worn away. So we have the pictures of what it looked like 5 years ago, what it looked like 3 years ago, and what it looks like now. And I have records of the landings in the first week of August and the first week of September. There wasn't one that was at high tide, including the town's landings. So on the week after 4th of July, the town was doing some road work. And the town barged a roller compressor. And that compressor, two of them actually, that compressor arrived 2 hours ahead of the high tide, got stuck on the beach, and it compressed the beach. And the compression is still there today. You can go down and you can see the side of the barge that it got off, at the point where it got off, and there have been multiple storms that have moved sand quite a bit since then. You can still see where the compressor rolled up. So there are things that the town can do right now. And one of them would be to start barging via CTC on Wednesdays of the river. And to barge the landfill waste up the river. That's something we could do immediately. And imposing regulations until a permanent site in the town, imposing regulations on landings so that landings are only permitted at high tide. Vehicles above a certain weight are not permitted at all. And these are things that can be done immediately. So you can hear in our voices that our lives have been changed by this. And you can hear that it's not a good change. So I'm going to ask that very quick changes be made as soon as possible to both the way the town uses the barge company and the conflicts of interest that exist between the town and the barging company get addressed in the formal process that the Maine State Legislature has laid out for town officials. So that the conflict of interests are declared and there are decisions about who will recuse and who will vote on what.
Can I get a clarification on that? Because we all use our Everybody uses the barge.
Not every, no. So I
You
do,
don't throw your trash away?
yes, I do, but
You
very
do.
rarely, very
You use the
rarely.
barge.
So, I don't think that line is very productive. It wasn't productive in 2018 or 2019. And I don't think it's going to be productive in working together to find the solution. But we can't bear it anymore. We shouldn't bear it anymore. Couple of things that I noted this summer, I did barge. I use CTC, I always do. The cop was there all 3 times that I barged this summer. In between boats, nobody else on the stone pier, no traffic like the pictures that Lee just showed you. The cop did not come to Bennett's Cove once for barging, not once. So that's something that can change, maybe not right now, but next summer. The cop can meet the barge and direct and write violations for violations of regulations. So that's something that can be done right away. The town can barge using CTC right away. I will propose on Sunday some other things for eelgrass restoration at Bennett's Cove as soon as possible in order to protect as much as can be protected in that cove as climate change starts to hit us. And as for conflict of interest, I will mail you out what the conflict of interest for the state of Maine is. And there is a strong advisory that every town has their own in addition to that. So this is the minimum, not what's really needed.
Thank you. All right, any other comments?
We, all of us who have spoken, both the selectmen and the public, have made reference to a barge's landing, singular. I know, I haven't kept, a daily log, not my job. But a few weeks ago, I was over at the Novel with a friend, pretty much all morning. And before I went to the beach, I was aware a barge came in around 8:30. And the last barge left at around 12:30. There were at least 3 landings. There may have been 4 that day. Something Pam said, I feel strongly that I'll name the person a flagger, perhaps law enforcement, but someone kind of controlling the traffic flow down there. And I also became aware, when the town referred to the dangerous situation, down at where the barge lands, when all the trucks are in a jumble there, that perhaps there needs to be some sort of walking path on the side. I don't mean the sidewalk, but perhaps where Amos's boat is. I mean, it might have to be, more than just there. I noticed one day when there was a huge amount of traffic on the road, trucks, the barge was in and so forth, that some folks were using the land trust path up through the edge of my field to avoid the road. Well, that's what I concluded.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to add one thing that I mentioned before. I encourage you to read Scott Anderson's letter of April 6, 2017. It's as appropriate then as it is now. And I think it gives the full picture and sort of a comprehensive picture of where we are. It wasn't even as extreme as it is now. So we could send it to you if you don't still have it. But I think it would be very helpful since I think somebody said they'd only read a letter from Jackie. There have been letters, and this one is very good, thorough, comprehensive analysis from maybe the community that lives there.
So if you have it, I'd.
Yeah, oh, we all,
Really?
yeah, was sent to,
We showed you.
I read it last week.
do you have it about this? Okay,
So if you can hand that out to board, that'd be great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I'll try to be brief, I'm sorry. Just a tiny bit of history, I'm not making excuses, I'm just telling you how it went down. When we were getting ready to start the town, I was part of the territory group and then with Mabel. But after that, I was also part of the transition team. And Leon Hamilton and I were assigned the transfer station operation. So we went and sat with town manager Bill Shane, looked at the budget, looked at the operation, talked to him about the barging situation with Venice Cove versus Stonewall. I felt we made a decent effort to try to have CTC be eligible to carry our solid waste. So at the time we were getting ready to contract, and we used to use pine tree waste. And so we brought pine tree waste right to the CTC barge, which at that point was dry dock up at Royal River, Boatyard, Scott Dugas's, so that they could physically look at the barge, look at the deck space, talk about the weight limit of the vessel. And long story short, CTC just was not set up very well at all, unfortunately, to serve our needs for moving dumpsters full or empty with trucks back and forth. Last I knew, just one of those darn garbage trucks, when it goes off with the compactor, is like 55,000 pounds. And that's packed full. So all that I'm saying is, I'm not making excuses, I'm just telling you the way it went down. We just couldn't, for a number of reasons, the barge only is rated at 100,000 pounds. It doesn't have a lot of high freeboard. It doesn't stay in the water all winter last night, I knew. And there was just a number of reasons why we just couldn't haul our solid waste, so that wasn't helpful where we are today. I just thought people should know that an effort was made.
Thank you.
And I know that currently there is some material that we get from CDC for the town roads, public works. I don't know if they get all of it from them, I don't know the whole, whatever, but they
A lot of it comes through CPC, but like you mentioned, the larger barges, when it comes to road equipment, when it comes to dumpsters, CPC can't hold the capacity for. And every barge that comes to Bennett's for the town, it costs us $1,000 to barge up. So we as taxpayers are paying $1,000 every time we get one of those dumpsters off. So it's not like, I know one's making money by means, but we're spending in the $30,000 for barging every year just to get our trash. And that's totally unrelated to people building, to renovation, things like that. So it's definitely a big burden on the taxpayers for the amount of money it costs.
I just wanted to add one point about CTC. I believe we're under a mandate from the state that limits the number of barge runs the CTC can make, that limits the size of the barge the CTC can run. And Mark pointed out it's a seasonal issue. So if you tried to schedule with CTC, they're usually pretty busy. If you have a week or two to wait, you can probably get your car on there. There are times of the year where it's easy to get off but not on. There are times of the year where it's easy to go the other way, just depending on the seasonality of the flow. I'm only saying that as background, but I'd like to reiterate, we really need to look at the entire picture. Thank you for your input on your view of Venice, and that's a big part of the picture. You guys live there. But we have to look at the whole community. As an example, one of the biggest safety issues we have in the town is the concentration of activity at the Stone Pier. The Stone Pier study and the Stone Pier plan will hopefully address that. Putting more barging into the Stone Pier takes away from the improvements we hope to make to safety down there relative to the current number of trips that are down there. That's not a limiting factor, it's just one of the factors that needs to be considered. The state dictate is a hard limiting factor. We can go to the legislature and try to get that changed. We know how much work it takes to go to the legislature to get something like that changed, but we need to look at all of the things we've talked about: a staging area, the safety of the road, the width of the road, parking area, pedestrian path. We need to look at the whole thing.
Have you looked at the boatyard? That's what, there's a lot of commercial traffic there. I mean,
I've personally spoken, may I answer?
Yes.
I've personally spoken to one of the owners of the boatyard. They are not interested in that business.
Public land.
no, they're not interested in that business. That's,
Right.
I mean, private,
Private land.
yeah, Venice is public, Boyar's private, I mean,
Venice is private. Venice is private.
but the town.
That land is all owned private. Yeah.
Every time the barge comes in, it crosses private land every single time.
We need to get a survey of the road that determines the meets and bounds of the road. The point for me is not whether the road at the boatyard is private or not. The property, the business is a private enterprise. We can't tell them you have to do this. That's a taking. So I'm just saying, let us study the whole problem. Thank you for your input. We're not going to solve the problem tonight. We're not going to come up with a solution tonight. I guarantee we're not. It's just, there's no easy solution to this. But we need to look at it again, given the current situation.
So a couple of things that changed and a couple of things that could change. So working with CTC to go up the river, which Lee and Hamilton was doing, might involve a new barge for CTC. And Casco Bay Lines traditionally did the majority of barging to Chablis. And they had a vessel called the Rebel, which landed at the wharf. And this wharf, when it was replaced, the current wharf was built to handle truck traffic. This Casco Bay Lines was doing the barging. It's possible that they may go back to barging. And it's possible that the barging is divvied up amongst multiple places. So we're at Sand Map Beach. Coleman's is a Sand Map Beach. Sunnyside is a Sand Map Beach. That's not done in a Sand Map Beach. That's done on the Rocky Beach with the mud base. So there are all kinds of ways to look at this. And certainly there have been lessons learned. But because the CTC barge is too small now, doesn't mean it has to be in even a year. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to think way out of the box.
So the problem, well, there's could be ways around it. There's I know there's the state plus the Yarmouth agreement.
Yeah, that's up the river, not landing in Pleasant Island.
As far as up the river, I'm not sure. That's why I said that.
All right, any other comments?
Just one about the river.
Go ahead.
Barging up the river depends on the generosity of Ralph Stevens' remaining family. It's the only place at CTC. In my opinion, am I correct, Gina? I believe Ralph Stevens and his remaining family have allowed CTC to land there, so, can't remember. We had a conversation with, been 20-something years now, with Ralph and that family, and they were gonna allow some stuff to go through there. I can't remember if it was gonna be, you know, solid waste and, but I'm just saying, it's just running into another private enterprise. You have to get permission from them.
Any other comments?
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you for listening and for taking us into consideration. Yes, thank you.
The agenda item. And take any necessary action.
I was gonna ask if there was any actions or any motions, so. Are there any actions or any motions proposed tonight? Karen?
I don't feel like I'm in a position to recommend an action. I think, so what I am sympathetic to these concerns, but I feel like I need to get up to speed on the situation there. I think when we started barging the trash off the island, that's when accelerated our use of that scope. But what I would like to suggest to the residents is, you know, that some people have a lot more history on this, at least than I do. So I would like to get up to speed, maybe by reviewing some of the materials in the letter that you folks had submitted back in 2017. And then maybe after that, maybe we could put it back on the agenda to sort of take some specific action. So I guess I don't feel like I should suggest a committee, a workshop, a contractor at this stage of the game right now.
I have an action to suggest. Can this same agenda item be on the next meeting, every meeting, so we have to force forward?
Yes,
I would not move that. I think we need to move up with all due speed on this one, and if we have other businesses. I think, see, prioritizing any one item to the exclusion of everything else by having it on every meeting.
Quickly, we had one community meeting with most of the neighbors, and I believe David Hill, you participated with me. The only thing that came out of that meeting was to try and stop people from leaving vehicles down there overnight. So currently, that is in effect right now. And I think you guys know that my opinion is we haven't paid very good attention to that as a town. So at least we could send somebody down there once in a while and take a look and make sure people aren't leaving vehicles. They've done it 3 times in the last 2 months.
David?
This has been a topic of discussion for about 15 years since we became a town, 16 maybe. And I think maybe the time has come to create a committee to specifically address this problem rather than just have it something that gets regurgitated every 2 or 3 years with no new solutions. And to charge that committee with discovering, first of all, what financing might be available from Maine Municipal or Maine Waste Management or any of the others that might be able to fund someplace else, whether it's Bennett's Cove, wouldn't be Bennett's Cove, someplace else on the island. I don't think there are going to be too many that aren't going to have some kind of impact, but there might be one. Maybe Sunset Landing, I don't know. But form a committee, figure out what the problems are, what the possible solutions are, look for funding to get it done, and then move forward. I think that will be at least an action step that would keep this, maybe not weekly meetings like Pam is suggesting, but something that keeps it before, not only the public, but before the board of selectmen. That's my suggestion.
Carol?
I'm not in favor of a committee at this point. I think we need to decide, what action we want to take. I think we've had a number of committees that have been on, that have looked at this issue. I think there may be some short-term things that are in our power that to enact, for example, the traffic control, something like that. And then maybe we do want to look at an alternative site or do a study about all the potential sites, but I'm not sure a town committee is the best way to accomplish that.
I would agree that assigning it to a committee would take it away from the focus of the select board. So it would not do that. But I have a request, and it needs to be a motion. I would ask that the town administrator put together a packet of all prior correspondence, the lawyer's letter, and that we move forward with a survey of the properties involved to determine what the options are. I think without a survey, know what we can do short term, situation at human events. I think we need to know what the lane limits and opportunities are. So I propose that we spend money, find it from an account for the survey. The others, I think, are things that you can handle by going through the correspondence and the files. But I think we need to spend, I would propose that we allocate $10,000 for a survey of the area from the low tide line to the trail, from the low tide line all the way up to the intersection. And then also survey the east side of South Road, survey South Road from the intersection with Wharf Road and Bennett's Cove Road and Deer Point Road, all the way to the property that belongs to
Motion.
All right. Got it. All right, is there a second?
I need a second until I know where the $10,000 is coming.
I'm new.
There's a land acquisition and development, there's a reserve account where this kind of funding comes from. The one suggestion I have is that that description is so vague that I would want to start with like Bennett's Cove Road, get a survey to determine what the town line is, and then go from there. Because you just listed potentially like 20 different maps and lots, and if we'd be surveying every property on Bennett's Cove and half the properties on South Road and half.
that wasn't my intent. May I restate? Can I restate?
Motion,
Withdraw the
motion to survey Bennett's Cove to determine what exactly the property line is would probably be in my suggestion, a good start. And then if you want to work from there, to determine, that's great, but.
So that line item you just mentioned only has $2,800. There's other. Coastal access fund.
I'd have to get the definition, which I don't have nothing today about what that is. I don't think that survey work of.
No.
I don't think so.
You would have to pull it out of your selectmen's contingency. If you do that, that's what unexpected survey work, since I started it, you've done motions for it, that's where it's come out of.
How much is in that contingency fund?
We do 14 this year. Yeah, we did 14 this year. Did we bring it back up to 16? I can't remember now.
Not what it's for.
Carol?
Yeah, I mean, that's what, I'm not sure the contingency fund is for something. What I suggest is we ask Vika to explore the capital fund, or whatever they call it, the reserve funds, and see, maybe we don't, Mark, see if there's a fund that's appropriate but I mean, it's hard to know because the definition of the funds may restrictly be used for, even the land acquisition development funds. For these kind of activities.
It's something in relation to do with roads. It got changed from like Stone Wharf Road to land acquisition and development to be broader. But I didn't bring my whole big binder tonight, so I'll have to.
So can we charge coastal waters to look at as a point to move forward, as coastal waters to look at the island as a whole, at commercial spots or either public right of ways or anywhere else on this island that for potential spots to bomb.
I would agree with, I would vote for a motion that says that. I still think that we need a survey of the actual lake. I'm trying to think of a way to word a motion. Yeah, no, I don't even, if we could ask Vika to find if there is money for survey, where there would be money for survey. Bennett Cove Road and that first section of South Road on the east side of South Road.
Can we table that motion until the next meeting? Till we get the information?
Yep.
And then that way we have actual.
And then we have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
It's not.
I think that.
I was just wondering, are there some existing surveys that we can get that are in that area? What was it thinking? I mean, I'm not sure how you.
What was your question there?
We would have to look,
I was
we'd
looking
have
at
to look
existing
into.
surveys, I know the land trust must have done some kind of surveying in that area.
They have existing points. The survey is not going to cost $10,000. It's going to cost $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, there are existing surveys, like Jackie recently did one. And in hers, it references Bennett's Cove Road 49.5 feet wide. But what you would want is, you would essentially at that point be collecting a survey of every single property that abuts Bennett's Cove Road to then determine, like, put in a puzzle together. I think in that case, it would be far more cost effective to do the survey of Bennett's Cove Road.
I think you're asking the wrong question. It sounds to me like you're asking, how do we make it work on Venice Cove? And I really think the question ought to be, where on this island should this activity take place? And if you have a golf course committee, I would think you could possibly get a solid waste committee.
Good point, thank you.
That's the
Not a
reason
solid waste.
we already have coastal waters.
I don't think it's the same thing at all. I think it's a more focused mission than coastal waters.
We do have a solid waste.
We do have a solid waste committee, yeah.
Well, that's true. But more specifically to this specific issue.
The one thing you need to keep in mind is this isn't going to go away in the next 6 months. Or potentially even a year. So we're doing something like a survey to try to get information to try to figure out how to limit. I mean, the current use, as I stated, you're looking at 22 feet of the town-owned road that's being used. There's 49.5 feet. So I'm not saying that the town's gonna go and explode and develop it, but you're gonna have to find some short-term solution to the existing problem down there. And if you look at potentially, I mean, all of the work that's been done at the Stone Pier, you're looking at $15 to $19 million work down there that could potentially will be hopefully funded by the government at 80%. It has been through all these meetings that I've sat in the last 9 months that I've been in this position, very clearly stated by state regulators that for this community, they're not going to fund if you want to add another ramp, anything like that. So those things will, I fully agree, need to be explored. You're expected to develop those as taxpayers' funds. So if you're gonna move barging to Sunset, expect to fully fund that 100% as taxpayers' fund, in addition to funding the stone pier, in addition to, finishing the roads, in addition to finishing the dredging. I mean, it's lots and lots of monies, but right now you have Bennett's that, I hate to say it, whether you like it or not, it's gonna be used one way or another, and the safety of it and the way that it's being used will not go away. So you need to not just eliminate it altogether, you can't, but you need to help find the safety and the solution for what exists and what's happening right now, while conjunction working to determine if down the road you want to build a whole new thing, because the way the stone pier is working, it's years, you're not gonna find the solution in the next year or 6 months, and so I think that's just, you gotta be realistic about it.
There could be other spots
Yes.
without going to Sunset.
And I mean, I know
And
that
that's
probably
what
just
was.
Yeah.
overstepped it, but just
Well,
put it in perspective, I think is really important.
Yes.
Lisa, thank you very much. That was great.
I'm sorry, I was probably out of line, but I just.
I want to go back to Jackie, and we're jumping ahead to think of what we can do, and it's gonna take a long time. But Jackie pointed out the safety of it. I believe, Jennifer, you talked about, there's an old boat down there that you're looking at, that you don't care about, and traps and things. I've been down there and looked this all over. We can move some things out of there so that the trucks can turn around, and maybe we can work with them so that they're not backing up. Jackie asked for some simple things, and I think maybe that we might be able to do that now, instead of jumping ahead with all these things. This is August too, and so things change. And the barge was used down there in 1996 when I had my house renovated. So it's been there a very long time. And I look at the people that are in this room tonight, and you all live away from the main roads. And Jackie and I have talked about this. I hear and see this. I don't go by the tides. I have noise all the time, and I've gotten used to it. And unfortunately, Shebig is growing. Now, either you want to have people come here and live and work with us and fill our schools, or you want to have nothing. And I'm sorry, it's not going to work that way. But I think there are simple things that we can do right now to help that out. And thank you for listening.
All right, I think we need to wrap this up a little bit before we're here till midnight. So, go ahead.
In regard to the simple things that Bill spoke about, would someone be willing to have a conversation with Foley about at least his own trucks? That would be a start, his black and yellow trucks, not backing up the road.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to ask the town administrator and one or two select persons to have a conversation with owners of Lyle Plant about the possibilities of improving the waiting and staging of vehicles going back off of the island, and about the issue and concerns of backing up the lanes of Venice Village.
Second back there. Any comments?
I'll volunteer to go talk with them if you'd like. I don't need to be there, but I'm available if they would like.
I do it.
Yeah. All right, all in favor? All in favor?
Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, I'm fine.
It's almost 9 o'clock.
It's been one of those. All right.
Yes.
It was not.
I need to.
That was.
Well, you didn't do you did the first one, lengthy, that's never, but I think we should ask Vika for the letters, the lawyer letters, and all. I don't know
All
what kind of
together,
information.
there's a whole folder, and I could just scan all that stuff in and either print it or just send it to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are we thinking of talking to coastal waters also? I mean, it doesn't hurt.
Can I just say something about that?
Yeah.
Just quickly. I think we have asked them already to start looking at the access points to the shore. Is that accurate? I haven't heard a report on that. I'm not suggesting that they're not capable of doing something else, but I would love to hear that they're starting on that before we give them something bigger.
Yeah, asking them to take this on feels a bit like assigning it to a committee or advocating. But I think we need to.
Maybe premature.
Okay. Well, let's see where, can you nudge them to see where they're at with the access points?
I will, I sent a couple of emails, but I'll do it again.
All right, Carol?
I was gonna say, I worked on that 20 years ago. I think I still have that work, and so maybe I can look at that.
That'd be great. Good. I don't know where they're at.
Coastal, we have a committee that really haven't been very functional, and that's the struggle, is they have a board, but not a functional board that's struggling to meet, and Justin Dowdy has been, I think, trying to corral, but been unsuccessful, and nobody else wants to join the board to be more active, so it's that, I think.
One member has been away for several months.
Okay. We all good? All right, moving on. 22-085, to hear an update on Indian Island Road and take any necessary action. I'll hand this off over to Bob. There we go.
Brief update, the joint, I guess you could call it a joint committee of 2 members of the Indian Island Corporation, 2 members of the Select Board, and 2 members of the Land Trust. Had our first meeting last week. I think all would agree it's extremely productive. We started off by talking about what each group's goals were, and then we asked each group for any proposed solutions. And, we heard those proposed solutions. We talked about limitations. We talked about what additional information is needed for those proposed solutions. And that information is circulating amongst the groups at this point. I think the next big step will be for IIC to get their members together to share that information in a manner that they see fit. And they did share that, I don't think they would mind me saying this, it's a big group. It's hard to get them all together to have a meeting, but they're going to push forward on that as soon as they can. Bo is in the bathroom, so I will now continue with my song and dance routine. Can we do communications? Can we move on to the next agenda? Is that possible?
I'm just gonna take over to do
Yeah,
that.
I can do that. Do we have any communications?
Mo had one that he was gonna share, but while we wait for him, I just, on a positive note, received a thank you letter from Northern Lights Health. During the budget, you appropriated $1,000 for a contribution, and we sent them that money, and they sent a very nice appreciative letter back to the selectmen and residents, saying that they appreciate, and the funds will be awarded and used to care for patients who lack sufficient health insurance or require telehealth programs for daily monitoring. So that was that.
So what was is there any motions made? Okay. All right, so communications.
Northern
Sorry.
Light helps that send a thank you card for a donation.
All right. I got a communication and I passed it on. Apparently I can't find it. I passed it on to you guys about Jeff Putnam. Just talked about bookkeeper and stuff. I was in communication with Vika, and I guess Tim is doing some of that or most of it or whatever. So I don't know where the communication or what Jeff is actually looking for. So,
I think what he was asking was simply that the job description be edited to include the fact that the school is part of his responsibility. Am I remember? It's been all, I read that. Wasn't that the focus?
yeah, it's something like that.
But you guys worked on that as well?
Yeah, that was basically what it was. And then I communicated with Ann back and forth, and the things that he was asking to specifically be in the job descriptions are things that he already does that are within the job description. They just don't specifically define the school because the warrant and the payroll system is all kind of the same process. And so we've just communicated back and forth and really talked about, with the transition of employees with COVID, there's been some readjustment as far as, when warrants are printed out. They used to be on every agenda, and now, they're more staggered based around when the bills are due, and more in line of what they wanted is they wanted the warrants to be present at every school board meeting for the selectmen to sign. Very much so in the routine of how things used to happen before COVID, and just kind of getting back to that habit. So we've been trying to communicate and, get Tim to, he's been doing a lot of communication with Ann and Kristen. So I think that it's helping once everyone's kind of figured out what the role is and what everyone's supposed to do.
So I would suggest Vika get with Ann, which he already has, and Jeff. Just get on the same page and see if there's something that we need to add to the job description.
Again, I talked to Ann, but I could reach out to Jeff to see if he's happy with the progress or if something more formal needs to be done by the selectmen to change the job description.
All right.
Is Jeff here?
Yes.
I would just add to your inquiry to Jeff to say, are there specific information points, results that you're not getting that you would like to get? Which I think you're already talking to him about, but to be very clear, please keep us posted if you're not getting the information that you need, the frequency of warrant signatures, that kind of thing, so that it's more specific to the actual needs.
Okay.
Any other communications? Moving on to approve minutes from August 10th, 2022 and August 24, 2022.
Second.
Carol, second. All right. Any comments? All in favor?
I can only be in favor of one.
All right. Items to be placed on future agenda.
We already have a list, I think.
A paper bill.
Additional, other than the things we've already talked about.
So do you want to add Dennis Cove as far as discussion on the?
Yes.
On what we read from the lawyer, all the information we gathered.
Yeah, just an update.
Do you want to put it as Bennett's Cove Road update?
Yes.
And I'll provide you the packet of everything that, I've collected, the letter from the lawyer, and then, if I find any, I'll contact the survey that Jackie's, property was done on to see if there's maybe any kind of surveys that, was done, or what it would cost to do a survey.
Yeah. And then the capital line budget, or we capital line to take out the survey money out. I don't know if I'm taking it right. Yeah, so then also, how easy is it to get a map of the island that show, I know there's one in the town office, the big one, but that shows residential, commercial.
Shoreline zoning, all the different solutions. It's on the website, on the town website.
We could ask Judy to prepare, I mean, you want a paper map, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just something that, well,
I mean, there's one on the website, if you want one that you can put on a table, she could.
I'd like to have,
A larger one, more than 8.5
One
by
like this.
11?
yeah. I mean, just to have in the packet so we can visualize and be like, okay, well, there's nothing here.
Okay.
You can't go there. There's something to look at so that we can visualize.
Something very valuable that Carol has posted on the internet, and that is the impact on the shores of Chesapeake climate change. Remember that from 2015, when it was a 1-degree temperature change. Now it's can't be held to, so it's not entirely accurate, but it gives you a good sense of what the island is going to look like with climate change.
Sure.
As you guys, as you've been looking at Indian Point and maybe Dennis is another one. The registration information, you know, sort of how the town's data registers on the maps is not good. And so we have a GIS contractor who's on contract to do some of these things. And I would really like to make it, I mean, unless you guys disagree, a priority to have her correct the parcel, to adjust the parcels so they're correct in the Indian Point area and also Bennett's Cove, right in the local area. I'm talking Bennett's Cove, just at the head of the road, because I think that's a challenge we have. Our parcel maps are so poor. If you look at Bennett's Cove, it's all right off the land maps.
But was she just hired to do the initial, so if we're asking her to do more work to adjust this,
She's had there's a certain amount of money appropriated for her to do adjustments kind of on an annual basis. I'm just asking that these be the first ones she work on.
is that the one that's on the plan?
And I'd be happy to communicate with her. It was really, I think it.
So the way it worked out, the planning board paid for the GIS viewer tool that's online on the town website. The town took on X $1,000s per year. And the unwritten agreement with her was it would be ongoing to start in one place on the island and start clearing up these registration issues and making the meets and bounds from the paper agree with the data that the town and the state use to represent where the boundaries are. I think Carol's suggestion is to simply ask Judy, if you haven't already started for this year, can you tackle these 2 or 3 areas first to get those cleaned up so that we have good, accurate data points represented on the documents that are more easily available to us so that we don't have to buy surveys.
So does that have to be done by Vika? Or can one of you guys have a conversation?
We budgeted and there's money appropriated and the contract was signed to have her update tax maps.
But there's no direction as to which ones you would hit first.
There isn't, but we have a list of, not a large list, but a list of residents who have, on an ongoing basis with the tax assessor and the town, complained that, their property isn't accurate. And so there are still people that are waiting already, for their tax map to be properly, appropriately updated, that we could tell them, please wait until the fall, please wait, wait. So, but what I'll do is I can reach out to see if, because I know there's been some recent changes with Dale Trainer and her sister. So I think those might already be on the list to do the updated. I'm just not sure if they are or not with it.
Here.
What I would suggest is I just write up a brief description of what we need relative to Indian Point and Bennett's Cove, and get that to Vika, and we can communicate with Judy. But I think it would help. I mean, I haven't tried to do it myself. I kind of know what those are, and I think that and I actually think we should expedite it. I understand property owners are waiting to hear, but I think it's a limitation right now for us working in these areas because it affects the registration of the zoning and everything. And I don't think it's a huge effort. I just think we ought to talk to the top of the list. It's very poorly registered.
It's not gonna burn at all, but it's not, it's pretty good at that stuff. Do that.
So I'll write a little blurb and then you can communicate with her.
I'll forward you the email from the one resident who.
That's okay.
No, that's fine.
All right, so we got Venice Cove, what came from Indian Island Road, are we gonna put something on there?
We should have an update, you're right, we should have an update at the next meeting as to where that group is.
So I'll put it on there, if nothing happens, then.
Yeah, it's just an update, it depends, really the next step is for IIC to meet with their members and get back to the group. Okay. Hopefully we'll have an update from them by the next meeting.
I think dredging should be an agenda
Oh,
item.
yeah.
I'm not sure where that's gonna land, but there might be a decision.
You had to dredge that.
So with the stone pier, he is, look at mine. He is going to have the final report to me by the 14th
Of September.
of September.
Right.
So if my idea was if I didn't hear from him by the end of this week, you know, I mean, he's been pretty good at communicating. So that'll be on the.
This is Jason Bella.
This is
Yes.
Mark Cable.
Yeah.
This is, no, this is Jason from Wright Pierce in
Oh,
reference
okay.
to the stone
All right,
pier.
thank you.
But yes, Mark Cable's version should be on the first one.
It's not end of the month.
Oh, that's helpful.
All right, so Stone Pier, final report,
Yeah,
do we want the Baker on there again?
I think, that could be in the weakest report, kind of. what she
All right.
accomplishes.
Resiliency result?
I will hopefully have submitted a grant application, we'll have joined a partnership, but there won't be anything else to say. And I'm assuming that you're giving Vika and I, and Kim Hamilton's been working with us in the islands to sort of license to continue and submit a grant application. I'll circulate it to everyone, but it will be a miracle just to get it done, to be honest.
So I think we could put that on the TA report.
Right.
I don't think that needs to be,
an updated third as well.
Of the, it's
Yeah.
community resilience partnership.
yeah, I don't think, unless.
Sure,
there's
do you
anything
have a
else.
meeting the 21st?
Yeah,
I believe so, yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Well, I think the code officer put everything on his desk, so all we have to do is go look at Jim Gallagher's request.
Yeah, he has a folder on his desk with everything in it, and then he also has scanned it and sent it everything to their lawyer.
So I don't think we need to do anything, I think that's already done there. Any other thing?
Well, and I just have a question on that. So if there's a letter from an attorney to town or to the enforcement officer, do we get copies of that?
There hasn't been any official letter, there's just been communication. So the attorneys reached out and said that they're looking for, it's like freedom of access. They just reached out, they wanted to have information on all of it, but there will be something coming down the path from an attorney, a legal, a document to the selectmen, to the code enforcement officer, town administrator, that will be representing probably, if not one, a number of people around the cottage road, but that hasn't formally happened yet.
Right, but I think it would be helpful to know. I mean, the first I heard about it was from Mr. Gallagher. It would be nice if it's either in the town administrator report or the code enforcement officer, but files, just so we know something's coming, because
Yeah.
I'm aware of the issue, but that was the first time.
I want to jump on what Carol said, that should definitely have been in the code officer's report this month, and it was not even mentioned. It's a big part of what he's been dealing with this month. He needs to put in there not just good news, but also challenging news. Okay, be my recommendation.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Would you? And,
Go ahead.
I'd like to move the number executive session pursuant to 405A personnel and 405C real estate.
Who's the second, Bob?
All in favor? All right, time to get up, walk around a little bit.
Do you have specific stuff in terms of real estate that you're looking to talk
Yes.
about? Okay,
Yeah.
because the other one,
Personnel.
we don't need it.